Welcome everyone to our podcast called A Cup of Leadership. Today we have myself and Dean Sarah with our bi-weekly podcast for the Arrupe community or whoever wants to find us on Spotify or YouTube. So within this podcast, we interview former alums of the Arrupe Emerging Leaders Program and other influential people in our community to gain a perspective on leadership, serving others, and everything in between. So this is our second episode, and we're super excited about it today. If you haven't checked out our first episode, please search for us on Spotify or YouTube. Type in A Cup of Leadership, and hopefully we pop up. And I'm going to kick it to Dean Sarah to introduce our guest this week.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dean Keys. And welcome back to our listeners. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Minerva Ahumada, who is our Clinical Associate Professor of Philosophy at Arrupe College. And I'm so excited to have her here. When, Dean Keys and I were brainstorming people to invite for our second episode, you were the first person to pop into our head, mainly because you've been here since the beginning, so you have all the tea. But no, really, because we see you as a leader and within our community, and students see you as a leader as well. And so we thought it was a natural choice to have you here. So welcome to A Cup of Leadership, Dr. Minerva.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dean Sarah, for that introduction, and to both of you for thinking of me as like one of your guests. This is exciting and a little bit nerve-wracking, but especially exciting. So I'm looking forward to our conversation and to like this great project that I am so not surprised that the two of you thought of doing a leadership podcast, and it seems to suit you really well.
Thank you. We practice our NPR voice when we're not doing this actually all the time.
We always do like testing. That it's fun. It's fun.
It is. Well, thank you. So, as one of the first faculty members at Arrupe College, I'm curious how your leadership has evolved over the years, especially as Arrupe has grown, since 2015. What does that look like?
The memories are all coming back, and I didn't bring my tea, so I will have to spill the tea without actually a cup of tea. I think when we started, we were a very small place. There were a handful of like faculty and staff members. So it was very easy to have these direct conversations with people, right? Getting to know the students and getting input from them and bringing it to those who could make change with it. As Arrupe has grown, we have also been more involved in larger university projects. So I think whenever I'm picked to do something as like an Arrupe faculty, that's where I feel like this responsibility to represent, to be truthful to who we are at Arrupe and how we do things. And because I don't know these people as well, I have to be more strategic. And I love that I get to observe first. And I have noticed myself doing that. Like I can't just run into somebody's office and be like, Dean Sarah, this happened. I have to be like, okay, what's my moment to speak? What is it that I want to communicate? And how can I do it, especially like in situations where my feelings are caught in the discussion? How do I present this side without sounding like I'm super emotional or this is causing distress on me, or I think like it will cause distress on somebody else? So learning how to navigate that, like what you were practicing your NPR voice. So I practice my outside of Arrupe voice. I'm speaking to a wider community. What do I want them to know? What are key points that I want to touch on? And how, what's the best way and moment to do that? So I think that's like something that I have noticed, especially like in the last couple of years. I can be very direct in my approach when we're in the building. I know who to go to. And because we have worked together for so long, I also know like, well, with this person, I can be 100% like, Minerva, I'm coming here and I can say like, I'm in my feelings right now, but we need to talk about this. But for, as we're growing and we're talking to a wider audience, I think that like leadership has to be more strategic and more planned and more thoughtful in different ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in there in that idea of being reflective, right? And not immediately responding through emotion, right? And so and understanding who your audience is. There's a lot of wisdom there to be shared.
Thank you. And I am a very emotional person, so I have to be careful with when that comes out and how that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Thank you.
When you share about your innate strength of being strategic, it reminds me of some of the conversations we're having with our leaders in our program, and being conscious of yourself and knowing what you're great at and using that passion to advocate for others or to advocate for yourself. So it sounds like you're doing that on behalf of the Arrupe community, and I just want to thank you for that, Dr. Minerva. And so as we
Definitely a
transition,
pleasure.
what'd you say?
Definitely a pleasure.
So it sounds like you're constantly a leader for Arrupe and asked to be to share your thoughts and on behalf of the Arrupe community. I'm curious, like, when did you realize that you were a leader or you had that leadership potential?
I still giggle at that question. Because if you ask me, like, are you a leader? My answer would be like, no. But then I have to look at the different projects that I'm involved in. I was like, okay, so it looks like maybe you are a leader, right? But I think that when I was in college, I went to a private university. It was pretty small, but it catered mostly to affluent people. I was there because I had a pretty hefty scholarship. I don't know, like my family wouldn't have been able to pay for it. So my first year was pretty rough. I really felt like I didn't fit in that environment. And my second year, one of my friends had this crazy idea. We should try out for softball. And I was like, I've never played softball. Like I grew up playing soccer on the streets with my brothers and my neighbors. So that was a sport that I was comfortable with. But that was also like my brother's sport. Same thing with basketball. They're really good at it. And in my family, nobody played softball or baseball. So it immediately appeared like nobody in my family will be able to tell me what to do or what it is that I'm doing wrong. So we tried out, and like initially I wasn't good, and we had positions because we needed to complete the roster. So just like, you're gonna go there because that's like where we need a body. But through the training, I started working with this coach, and he was one of these like very silent but very caring figures in my life. And he was the one who started pointing out things that I could do well. And whenever this question of like, when did I realize that I was a leader, it always goes back to conversations with him and conversations with, I became a catcher. That was like my position. So having to talk to the...
That's an important position. I just want to say that.
And it's amazing. I don't think that catchers get enough recognition. And one of the things that I love, and I still think about it a lot, is going to my pitchers and being like, dude, you got this. I trust you. We're gonna do this. And we're doing this for fun. We're not doing this because like somebody's gonna recruit us, or we're just doing this because this is part of who we are. So having those like 30-second conversations when you see that your pitcher is like making you stand up all the time, you're like, okay, we need to talk, we need to calm you down, right? Because so much is on you, but you also need to trust that you have a team. So how do we spread that? So those are the moments when I'm like, okay, so that nobody taught me to do that. I had no knowledge that this is something that catchers can do for their pitchers, right? Or like in general for the team. But the fact that this coach trusted me enough that he would be like, you go, you know what to do. Say, okay, so softball, the last 3 years of my college experience, it's like that's where my leadership skills started to get some training. And it's the moment where I can pinpoint like, yeah, like there were people who started following me. There were people that I was responsible for and that I needed to work with.
Yeah. Wow, that's such a powerful story. I feel like I was there with you as you were playing softball in college. I think that sports usually kind of is a pathway for a lot of young people in finding like leadership potential. And coaches usually have a very impactful voice when they are working with influential minds, right? I also want to say that I can see in those conversations that you had with your pitcher, I see some of those conversations translating to students that you work with on an individual basis, especially like going into your office and just encouraging them and reassuring them that they got this. And I'm happy that foundation started there. So I just wanted to share that, Dr. Minerva.
Thank you, David.
I think one thing that stood out to me from the story that you shared was your willingness to try something very different. That, you said that, I'm typically a soccer player, and, softball wasn't really my sport, but you still went ahead and did that. And I think that also, that also is a representation of leadership, right? Like stepping away from something that you're comfortable with and moving into an area that is a little bit gray and a little bit unfamiliar. And there's a lot of growth there too. I think that happens when we are in a space that that we're not so familiar with.
Yeah, you're making me reflect on an experience that I thought I had reflected enough on, but I really appreciate both like your points. I think, David, like it I can see talking to students and telling them, right, like you got this, here's why. There's a line, there's a thread that's connected there. And honestly, I think this is something that people who come from families with a lot of kids, there's 5 of us in my family, sometimes you just get pigeonholed as something. So Sarah, when you mentioned like trying something different, to me it was that, right? I want to be my own person. How do I do this? And it's taking a risk, it's taking a a step outside of that box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's so cool. So awesome. I feel like I got to know you on a whole different level with that question too.
I know, I did not know you were a softball player.
Oh my God, I love it.
So next time we gotta start like a softball competition, maybe with the other colleges at Loyola, and you'll be our ringer. How about that?
Sounds good. It's been a couple of years,
It's
but
like riding a
yes,
bicycle.
let's do it.
So, Dr. Minerva, I'm curious as to like how does your work as a professor and an advisor empower students to be leaders? So, for instance, I recall we were meeting in person. You would invite community members to come to a poster session, and students were able to explore societal issues that they wanted to fix, and I was floored by their projects and their responses to it. But how, like, typically, like, how do you empower those students to take those risks to do that?
I think a lot of my formation as a teacher has to do with being intentional about being student-centered. So how do you find those moments and remain true to the fact that you said you were student-centered, not just like in your first job interview, but throughout the time, like what are things that they're interested in? How can you use your class to foster their creativity, right? Or like as an advisor, how do you get to know them so that you can actually speak to who they are and the concerns that they have? So I think there's a lot of like, again, like that more strategic form of like, I need to get to know who I'm working with, who my students are, and then using that to carve opportunities, right? So one of the, I don't know how students see these, but I was always amazed. One of the things that we used to do in the ethics class, and I'm hoping to bring it back after the online classes, is that students were given a packet of philosophical text. They had an ethical theory that they had to learn and present to the class. In order for them to learn it, we had a good number of sessions that were just dedicated to them reading, having the opportunity to ask me and their groups questions, and then to start thinking, so how do I present this to my classmates? What do I have them read? What do I have them respond to? And whenever you, I don't know, like for you, but whenever I give that, like, it's not my class anymore. I have an idea of what is going to happen and I have some outcomes and I know how to walk you through them so that we can see them as the end, right? Like you have to learn the right components for the theory and you can't misrepresent those. So I'll let you get to them and I'll guide you through them, but it's going to be the accurate thing. But it opens yourself and it makes you very vulnerable, right? And if you are being true to letting others lead, you have to learn that you really have to step back. And you can't just be like, I want to hold your hand, or I want to correct you, and I want to add, and I want you to do what I want you to do instead of what you said you wanted to do. So having that patience to be like, okay, I said I wanted you to do this, and I mean it, so I'm going to be here. If you have questions, you come to me. And we had these dedicated check-in times, right? So when times for presentations came, it was amazing what students would engage with. There was a presentation on feminism, and they had an analysis of this Beyonce video against this Taylor Swift video and how female bodies were being used, in which composition were there full bodies, in which were there only parts. What does it mean when you only see parts of women, right? And I was like, I would not have been able to do that. Like, I would have done something cool, but not that, right? And it's like, it's the payoff when you can really guide somebody is so great. That to me, like, I know at some points it was a frustrating experience for students because they had to work with others, and sometimes not everybody is in the same place because the theories were hard and they rather have them explained than have to go through them. But again, seeing them, like the cases that they brought up, one of our groups brought up issues of undocumented citizens, right? And how the sort of visas or opportunities to legalize their situation are so narrow. And again, I would have included something on undocumented citizenship because that's like very important to me. But the way in which they did it, right? And the fact that it is coming from their peers, I think that's what made these teaching sessions more relevant, more important to the students. And then something that I have been able to hear after hearing them complain in the classroom, like, oh, this is too much. Like, oh, I transferred. And my professor is like, you guys are going to do a presentation on this. I'm like, I got this because I've done it before. Like, yes. Yeah. So we're not only allowing you for spaces to be you and to use those assets that maybe you don't even know like are assets in an academic setting, but we're also preparing you for what comes next. So that next time that you have to, and going back to Dean Sarah's point earlier, next time that you have to step into a terrain that is a little bit different, you will do it with more confidence. You haven't totally been there, but you can go back to this experience and look at yourself in a different way.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So yeah, if you hear them like in a year or something like that, like, oh my gosh, she's having us do this, be like, there's a reason.
Just trust the process.
Trust the process. I was just going to say that. Oh, it made me cry a little bit because it is such a beautiful thing to watch students grow over time and also see them come into the realization that they do got this. And this is a learning environment. We all learn from each other. It's such a collaborative space that we can all take away something from what somebody else is sharing.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. In that project, I feel like students find unique, like their unique and individualized voices too. And to think about like ethics and I feel like it's for me, it's like a hard concept to grasp, but once you tailor it to who you are and what you're interested in, I think you're able to kind of share it in from your own perspective, from your own view. And I think that's what you're allowing the students to do. And it's such a meaningful experience. And I think that students will always remember like that part. It will stay with them forever, that experience, because of all the reasons that we've previously mentioned. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thanks. We kind of touched a little bit upon this, but you wear many hats in our community. As a faculty member, advisor to a second year cohort, you're part of the transfer team, you're an advisor to, I don't know, 7 different student organizations. you're a cat caretaker, you're a baker, all kinds of things, you know. Um, I'm curious how your leadership style is adjusted within each of those settings within our community.
The composition of the group you're working with, it's always going to me, like it's always going to determine how you lead, right? I don't think that you can say, oh, I'm this kind of leader, or I'm sure there are people who do that. Like, I'm this kind of leader, and now everybody has to bend to what I do. When I work with faculty, we're working with other leaders, right? And everybody has different strengths. Everybody has different areas of knowledge. I think the transfer team is a great example for that. We're working with Nicole, right? We're working with Julie Garcia, Colleen Clark, and then 3 faculty members, Kate Neeson, Julia Bininsky, and myself. And even though we're looking at the transfer process, we're looking at it through very different lenses. Our concerns are different. So I think my role is to see how we can orchestrate that. And even though I'm really bad at listening to jazz, I think jazz is the best example for situations like that, because you always want the instrument, right? You want that instrument, you want that person to have their moment to shine, because they're relevant, because that encourages them, because that's what they're in the team. And if they don't have the moment to shine, then they're going to start questioning, what am I doing here? Am I just wasting my time, right? But at the same time, you have a goal. There's a vision that you have. So it's like, I lend a little, I tighten a little. Sometimes maybe I tighten too much. Ask people. In other cases, it might be that things have been so loose that you have to readjust, right? But I think, especially in the cases where I'm chairing a committee or I'm working with students, right? I want to know, like, why am I needed here? What's supposed to be my role? Am I leading? Am I the chairperson? Then I need to make sure that the vision is there. Am I here to support the anonymous llamas? Then my role is to figure out what it is that they need, instead of imposing, like, I would want us to do, right? It's like, okay, so can I make recommendations? I think this would be, but the decision is yours, right? I think at some point, when they were doing the painting, the anonymous llamas were going to have that painting session. It's like, I think we need external help, right? That's gonna be my advice here. We need to bring Dean Keys in, because we need to know what resources we have, what sort of support, what strategies to use. And that was super helpful, right? So knowing why you're part of a team, what it is that you need to know to do in order to have that team be successful, right? And recognizing when you are not the person who has the knowledge. So who else do you bring in? Who do you consult with? And that's the same when you're advising. When you're advising, I don't have all, you guys know that I don't have all the answers. I send emails like, I have this student, right? I enjoy that. I enjoy being the point person. I enjoy fading into the back and be like, now you guys take it. This is where my role. And I hope, I really hope that that's something that I can continue doing throughout, like, my different roles, knowing when, like, this is not about me and it is my time to be quiet, listen, or definitely, like, this is not me, I need to step to the side. Because I think that can be really empowering, especially as we're working with students and they're growing into who they are, say, okay, I'm still here, but you got this. Check in with me, let me know, but I don't need to micromanage you. I don't need to, right? We have established, especially like I have sophomores right now. I think like we have established a relationship, I'm here and you can always come back, but I don't have to be in your business all the time. Not all the time.
It's funny, well, as you were speaking about the different groups that you are a part of, it reminded me of something we're going over right now in the Arrupe Emerging Leaders Program, and that's common purpose within a group, right? And so kind of establishing what is my purpose, what is each person's role, but we all have a common goal, right? Whether that's like we want to assist students in the transfer process, or we want a student to graduate, or whatever that goal is. But finding that common purpose really does take a lot of self-awareness too, and recognizing our spaces within different groups. And so I think you said that, especially as it changes throughout your experience in each different organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know where you are and where your strengths are within each team and with each group, like you articulated, Dr. Minerva. And just to piggyback on what Dean Sarah was talking about, we literally just had this conversation last night about common purpose and different ways to find common purpose. And you gave the same analogy that I gave as far as having a jazz ensemble, and listening and getting input from different instruments, and you want to hear from all of those things to create a good sound, a good song, or a good band. I don't know if that really translated well with the students as far as jazz is concerned, but I think they got it. So I'm glad you reiterated that point.
I think we need a philosophy and media session where we show them soul.
Oh, yeah.
Because like that's how the movie starts, right? And it picks up on a lot of elements that have been really important for jazz. So maybe that's the way of making it land. Let's watch this movie and then like let's talk about jazz more.
We got to make that happen. Yeah. Okay, so speaking about our Emerging Leaders Program, we have a really great cohort this year, and they are really engaging and listening and learning and working together every Thursday night. But they really want to have advice. They want to know like advice. So in your own life, thinking back to when you were a student, if you had to tell your younger self some advice on leadership skills, what would they be?
So I'm a philosopher and I take time travel very seriously. So there are a lot of paradoxes that happen if I had to give my younger self advice. One of them could be that I don't listen to the advice that I'm giving to myself, right? So I think the way for me to get out of the time travel paradox in my head is it wouldn't be me giving me the advice, right? And it would be listening to those who are near me and finding those voices that I can trust. So my baseball coach, Manuel Padilla, he never said you're a leader. He just started letting me do things, right? He didn't oppose it. He encouraged some of the changes. So you won't have like that voice from the future that is going to tell you, but you have those voices from the present who are telling you. So it's your job to analyze, why is this person trusting me? Right? As we're talking about like my softball career, I have this picture of where we were traveling and I became the captain, and it was a surprise, right? Like during breakfast, they just announced like, oh, Minerva is the captain. And I can see him putting the armband on me. And that's a moment that has stayed with me, right? That's like, okay, so that's somebody telling you, and you can take this in like a spiritual way, you can take this in a non-divine communication. This is a moment that you need to understand, and you need to find the meaning that it has, right? Because it means something. It is not just momentous right now. How can you transform it and make it part of your life? So I think that when we listen to people, like right now, receiving that email from you guys and the invitation, say, okay, that's something that I need to take seriously, right? They wouldn't just invite anybody. They're not like urging for people. There's a bunch of students that are very amazing that they could have invited. So I need to take that seriously and ponder, why is this happening? What am I supposed to learn from it? That I have strengths, that people see those, that even if I giggle when you ask, like, when did you realize that you're a leader? That it is there, and to reflect and learn from that. And the signs, the voices, the people, it won't always be clear. And sometimes you will learn because you put up a fight about something that mattered. And there's nobody that's encouraging you, right? But when you look back to that moment, you can see like, yeah, I fought for fairness. I fought for self-respect. I fought for finding my own path. I fought for, and that's a moment that makes you a leader, right? But I guess like to sum this up, one of my favorite words in English is nutshell, because I learned this in a book, right? So in a nutshell, I don't think that you will have a figure appearing to you and telling you, here's the advice. Mm-hmm. So as you're journeying, take stock on, yeah, this is something that makes me more me. This is something that makes me more authentic. This is something that doesn't harm others. This is something that some people are looking at me and they're giving me a space. I deserve the space. Here's why. And then we don't have to time travel.
Although that would be cool.
Oh, yeah.
That's such great advice, though. I think there are so many people who are there and encouraging us, but we have to shed light and really pay attention to them and their encouragement. I think that's making me reflect now.
I think those are the students that you're working with, right? Mm-hmm. They are in this program. So, and I'm sure like you're exploring this with them, but why are they in this program? It's not only because they were nominated, they also accepted it. Mm-hmm. So what's the fate that they are accepting through being participants and wanting to learn more and wanting to embrace that leadership opportunity that you're giving them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's such a philosophical answer and response. But it's really important for the why, right? And why am I here? And recognizing that many steps have happened before that, right? And kind of like Dean Keyes said, taking stock not only of the people that have, brought us to the space, but the choices that I have personally made to have gotten me there.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it for the podcast. I want to thank Dr. Minerva again for being here, being such a great interviewee and giving us so much wisdom, but also another, I don't know, I feel like I got to know a little bit of personal history from Dr. Minerva as well. So thank you again. And thank you for all the listeners out there who are paying attention to A Cup of Leadership. We will return in about 2 weeks with a new guest. So stay tuned and see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All the community members at Arrupe College and our partners at the Arthur J. Schmidt Foundation for their support in the Schmidt Scholars Leadership Program.